Howdy, y'all. So today we're going to talk about what you need to build a safe and efficient glass-blowing studio, home studio, or studio space where you find a rental area. The thing that we need to focus on in this video is mitigating risks, because that's really what we're doing in this profession. Is we're doing something inherently dangerous, and at the end of the day we have to accept those consequences, but we have the ability to exclude certain factors that can bring us bodily harm, and in doing so creating a space where we can be productive, creative, and experience a lot of fun and joy while not having to worry about whether or not we are poisoning ourselves with silica dust, inhaling cadmium, which will cause cancers, or if a bottle were to explode and sever an artery in our body, because those are real factors that come into our day-to-day life as glass blowers. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to think about when building a studio is the space that the studio will be in, whether it's at your home, whether it's at an industrial park, or whether it's in a pre-existing glass blowing studio where you are going to set up your bench space. Very important. First thing, what's the floor made out of? Is it concrete? Is it wood? Is it metal? Is it tile? Is it carpet? If the floor is flammable, it needs to be covered with a non-flammable material in the entire space that you're working in. If you think, oh, I've got wooden floors, but I'm going to put 6 by 6 feet of hardy backer around my bench, it'll be fine. And then a component falls out of your hand, rolls 8 feet, burns a nice hole in that wood floor. Or if it's enamel, melts the enamel. Tile's great, concrete's great, metal even is fine. If you have carpet, don't ever in your life, never, ever set up a glass blowing studio in that space. And I mean that with my whole chest. If you have wood, you can mitigate it by putting down hardy backer, metal, tile. Simple fixes to create spaces that are more applicable to the things you want to do inside them. Second thing you want to think about, what are the walls made out of? Are they metal? Are they concrete? Are they wood? Are they drywall? If it's drywall, my best thing that I did in mine, I have drywall in my studio because it's in my garage. It is hardy backer, one layer, and then metal. So the metal stops it from penetrating through, and the hardy backer protects the sheet wall, you know what I'm saying, from the heat if something were to touch the metal. If you have wooden walls, same thing. Metal, concrete walls, those are fine. The third thing you need to think about is, how much space do you have? Can you put both of your arms out in a T formation and still not be touching anything? Can you then put your arms out in front of you and still not be touching anything? That needs to be a priority. Space has to be a priority on your bench. I've been in a studio space where they gave me a little 2 by 2 foot nook. Didn't work for me. I immediately moved out. I was there days and was like, nope. So even if you're moving into a pre-existing glass blowing studio, you need to find out whether or not you actually have space for your physical body, because if you don't, it's not going to work out. You need to respect that your body needs space to blow glass correctly. Another thing to think about is, in that space, where are you going to be putting your table in that space? And the reason it's important is because when we talked about the walls, how far away is your torch going to be from that wall? And how far away from the ground is your torch going to be? Because You need to make sure that the radiant heat off that torch isn't heating up that wall. And you need to make sure that if your torch were to fall on the ground, it will not light up everything on the ground. And you might think that sounds crazy. It can happen. It is a risk. It could happen. You might have it C-clamped to your table, but your arm might come across it, knock it loose, your torch goes flying. It's a real risk. So think about these things. If it were to fall, where is it falling and what is it hitting on its way down? The next portion of the studio you need to think about is going to be your table, your actual bench spot. What is that going to be made out of? Metal's the best, obviously, but wooden tables are really great too. You need to line those with either tile or hardy backer board. There needs to be multiple layers so that you're not burning down through, or if you burn through a layer, it can then be replaced. My hardy backer board is 5 years old, I think, at this point. I replace it about every 5 years-ish because I draw on it and then I work on it, and when you apply heat to it, it does release the moisture in the board and it crumbles away and you eventually have to replace it. So that's just, a part of it. Just know that upkeep of your studio is also a part of building your studio. You don't just build it once. You are constantly going in and mending, repairing, and continuing the longevity of your space. So whatever table you want, decide that for yourself. A really important factor about tables: how tall is your table? And what I mean by that is, I blew glass in a studio where the table was chest height. Because my shopmate decided, because he was 6 foot tall, that he needed a table to accommodate him. Except for after a while, he realized the table was too high, and he built an extender to go underneath the table to pull out like a drawer for his torch because the table was too high. Don't make the table too high. Also, don't make the table too low. You don't want to have to squat to blow glass. My table is waist height because I sit while I work. I have stood while blowing glass for years and I hated it. I didn't like it. It didn't make me happy. My feet hurt, my back hurt. And after working 40 hours a week for years on end, I decided that I was going to get a table where I could sit because it made me more comfortable. It preserves my body from unnecessary strain, because blowing glass is enough of a strain as it is. If you do want to stand, you need to get something to stand on, because your back will hurt, your shoulders will hurt, your knees will hurt, your feet will hurt. And like I said earlier in the video, if you get a mat, you need to know that if you drop something on it, it will burn a hole in that mat. It 100% will burn a hole in that mat. And they're not cheap. They're like $150, $200, $300, $400, depending on the mat that you get and how nice they are. The one that I stand on at work is like a $400 mat. It's very nice at my day job, but it's expensive and it's not something I would want to burn holes into. That being said, it's your preference, but for God's sake, don't put a fucking rug where you stand. That will catch on fire. And then all of a sudden you're going to be trying to figure out how to put out a fire while your torch is running, while you got hot glass in your hand. Don't do it. So let's talk about how we're actually going to power our torch, which is going to be our propane and our oxygen cylinders. You can run some torches off of natural gas, but it's not very common. You can do it on butane. You can do it on another flammable gas, but very, very, very expensive. Propane is actually the cheapest alternative, and it is the most readily available, to go for that. You can get propane tanks at grocery stores, gas stations, and some U-Haul places, but my personal recommendation to you is to find your local propane distributor. At those facilities, they will have brand new propane tanks, and they will cost like a brand new propane tank, but you can get a 50-pound refurbished tank for the cost of 50-gallon or 50-pound propane tank for the same cost as a 25-pound propane tank that you're going to pick up at any old grocery store. It holds twice the amount of propane, and when you actually go get them filled at the distributors, they fill it up with 50 pounds. 50. They don't skimp you. They weigh it right in front of your face. If you buy propane from your gas station, from your grocery store, from your U-Haul place, they don't put full 25 pounds in those 25-pound tanks. It's actually like a rule, like a regulation. They fill it anywhere between 17 to 23 pounds. You're always going to be paying for the amount that you're not actually getting in those situations. Save yourself some money, save yourself some headache when you start running out of propane. Just go get the 50-pound tank, 30-pound tank, 75-pound, 100-pound. If you are going to get a 100-pound tank, they are actually cheaper at Lowe's, and you can take your tank to your house and you can have your propane distributor come to your home or to your studio and actually fill it from a mobile tank that they have. You have to pay a delivery fee, but a 100-pound tank lasts, if you're working 40 hours a week, that tank will last you 4 or 5 months. 40 hours a week, just blowing through it. It lasts a really long time. For oxygen, what you're going to want to do is go to a local or nationwide compressed air gas facility. So places like Airgas, Lambton, and CGS are the nationwide ones that I have here in my city. CGS stands for compressed gas supply. You'll need oxygen tanks, and oxygen tanks come in different sizes. Just whichever size works for you will work for you. You can get one tank, you can get multiple tanks. Some of those companies will allow you to rent those tanks monthly or make you outright buy those tanks. So whatever is in your financial capability is going to be where you're going to need to invest. If you can afford, at least my tanks were $400 a piece. But over the time that I've used them, if I'd been paying $10 a month on them, I would have paid way more money out of pocket long term than the short term investment of the $10 a month. So you just have to decide what's best for you and what you can afford right now and what's best for your future goals in your flame working. So that's going to be your propane and your oxygen. Another thing about the cylinders is that they should technically always be outside of the space that you're working. That's a very difficult thing to do. So if your tanks are going to be adjacent to you somewhere in the room that you're working, they need to be upright, chained to an immovable surface. And the reason I say that is because I'm about to drop a clip into this video showing you the destruction that an oxygen tank can do if the top is popped. I don't have a video of a propane tank exploding, but just know that if a propane tank explodes in the room that you're in, you may not die instantly, but you will bleed out very quickly. It needs to be secure, upright position away from any source of flame. So, that being said, I'm going to drop the clip right now.
The valve has sheared clean off, and that's a very good sign. It looks like the cylinder flew straight and true, but did it have enough thrust to crack the wall?
Oh, God. It was the lard that did it.
At 40 miles per hour, the air tank turned the cinder block to cinders. It even put a fair dent in the wall 6 feet behind it.
It totally.
No way.
It didn't go all the way through, but it went through this one, and it was going. It's working its way through that one.
So essentially what you just watched is a tank that can take off your legs, a tank that can blow through your chest, a tank that can go into your home, killing your animals. You can, if it's in an open area where people are congregating, it can immobilize somebody, it can cripple somebody, it can kill somebody. Don't do it. Don't lay your tanks down. Never lay your tanks down. Upright, chained, immobile. Just don't play that game. The next thing we're going to talk about is your torch itself. What do you want out of a torch? What do you really need out of a torch? If this is your first torch, your second torch, if it's your work torch, or if it's your personal torch, these are all different things you want to take into consideration when buying or having a torch for yourself. I work on a Bethlehem Bravo. Now, if you talk to certain people, they would tell you that that's a beginner torch. Though, I don't know if you can tell or not, I do particularly advanced things with that torch. It's not about the torch you have, it's about what you can do with the tools provided. You don't need to go out and buy a $5,000 torch. You can go and get a $800 torch, $1,000 torch, and it will provide for you the necessary accommodations to make the work that you want until you need something more highly tuned and specific. I haven't gotten there yet, that's just me, but I would like to upgrade eventually. So I'm 11 years into blowing glass now, and I've had the same torch for 11 years, and I love it. I have worked on other torches throughout the years. I've worked on Carlisle's, I've worked on GTT's, and I've also worked on Herbert Arnold's. The Bethlehem Bravo is still my favorite torch. That's just me, though. I am sensitive to really loud noises, so the Carlisle is not my friend. I do not like it. It is extremely loud, though it is very powerful, and you don't need another torch. Carlisle is the end. Like, you get a Carlisle, you'll be good forever. If you get a Herbert Arnold, you'll never grow into it. It will always have more possibilities to create flame chemistry than you'll ever be able to master. Trust. A GTT, it does exactly what you tell it to do, and there is no wiggle room. So if you're new to blowing glass and you're overheating, you're boiling, your pieces are moving too quickly, the GTT is known for its intense, rapid heat. Bethlehem's are like a warm, uplifting, almost like a baking, like an oven type experience. You're bringing it to heat. You're not blasting it with heat. The Herbert Arnold does both. It can send searing heat into an object, or it can lightly bring heat into an object. The Carlisles are the same. You can get a variety of both, but Carlisles do run hotter than Bethlehem's. The Red Maxes are closer to the Bethlehems. They're not searing direct heat. They are the warm, cozy, bringing something up to temperature kind of torch, which, depending on your flame working style, will depend on how you're able to use its capabilities to your advantages and how it will bring disadvantages to what you're trying to create as well. Because I know that when I worked on the Delta Elite for GTT, for my day job as a glass productionist, it was really nice to have that extremely thin, intense cutting flame when doing certain things that I don't have anymore, and I wish I did have, but not $5,000 wish I had. So it also depends on your finances and what you can afford, but just know that no matter what torch you get, and I mean this, no matter what torch you get, you're going to get something out of it, and you can make it work. So never feel bad that you can afford the expensive torches, and know that if you think you've hit a wall, just think again. Think about how you can implement heat and implement hand torch, a Bunsen burner. Things that you can add to your torch to produce the product that you really desire. So That's torches. An important thing also about torches and your cylinders is that your lines never touch the ground. Never. Never touch the ground. They do not touch the ground. They either are housed in a hardline unit or they are zip tied up off the ground. I have been in multiple studios where lines have popped because they've been walked on, hot glass sat on top of them for too long that had come off of shrapnel. Lines stay off the ground. I mean that. The next point we're going to talk about is ventilation. So the difference between having ventilation and not having ventilation is over time you will develop different types of sicknesses and types of diseases that will kill you. Straight up, I'm not gonna lie. You can get silicosis, which is whenever there is a buildup of essentially fiberglass in your lungs to the point where you can no longer breathe and you die from suffocation. You can also get heavy metal poisoning from using any type of metal like silver, gold. That fine spray can get in the air around your face. You breathe it in, and then over time it will poison you. There are cadmiums in some of the colors, and cadmium is a known carcinogen. It causes different types of cancers. And so there's also just lots of like heavy metals and minerals in glass colors. And when you heat up glass, you are vaporizing some of those metals, some of those materials out of the glass. It just happens. It's just a byproduct of taking things to a boiling temperature. So to avoid inhaling that stuff, you're going to want to have a good ventilation system. A CFM fan is what you're going to want for your studio. Now you can create a hood for your space. You can get ducting tubing to go right in front of your torch just to suck that air away. You can, in the worst circumstances, have a large industrial fan or a fan of any sort just blowing that away from your face. You don't want that air to circulate in the room. You don't want it to circulate around your body. You need ventilation. And if anybody ever tells you that you don't, because it's a large enough room, get the fuck out of there. Get the fuck out of there. I'm not even kidding you. I was told in a studio with 10 other people, professional glassblowers, ventilation's fine. I got ventilation sickness in about 2 days. I left the studio, everything went away. My headaches went away, my nausea went away, my stomach stopped hurting. Do you want to know why? Because a flame produces carbon monoxide. 10 flames going in the same room for 40 hours a day, or 40 hours a week. 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. That's a lot of carbon monoxide just gathering in a room. A lot of heavy metals and minerals being dispersed into that air when it's not circulating correctly. Don't do it. Get ventilation. My ventilation is 1400 CFM. It means that because I'm working in my garage and the space is so big, it's not 1400 square feet. But I like my fan to work very well. Because over time your fan will start to slow down and decrease as the motor burns out. But depending on the size of your space, I personally just double whatever the size of the space is. 1400 is like way overkill, but I had been poisoned a few times in a few studios, and so I decided that I was going to get a fan that worked. But you don't have to get a fan that just like hauls air out of your space. Just enough where it's pulling that off cast of gas and minerals away from you. You do not need to make yourself sick to blow glass. I promise you. So, ventilation. The next thing we're going to talk about is tools. So tools are really, 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 really important because the tool makes the task. And when I tell you tools don't have to be expensive, tools don't have to be expensive. My favorite tool, a tool I use every single day, 20, 30 times a day, is a $2 pair of reverse tweezers that I bought from Michael's. Came out of the jewelry section. They are a dream. And how much are those reverse tweezers, you might ask, on any type of glass website? $30, $40, $60. No thanks. All of my carving tools, I bought for $10 online. They're dentist tools, and they have different types of edges, different types of shapes, different types of thicknesses on each of the edges, and they allow me to carve and create different types of textures and different types of shapes very easily. So dentist tools, not glass blowing tools, dentist. My my cutting blade is a butter knife that I found at a thrift store for 50 cents. And my glass shears, I don't know if y'all have seen glass shears online. They're about $200, $150, $200. I bought mine for $5 at the grocery store. They're bone cutting shears for like chicken and stuff. They're extremely sharp. They work extremely well. I will never buy glass shears because I just don't have to, because for what I do, for what I need, those $5 scissors are going to work for me every day, all day. Don't buy normal scissors, like bone cutting scissors, because they're going to be sharp enough to get through the glass and hardy enough to get through the glass. Normal scissors will just like break at the hinge. You may want really expensive tools, and that's good to invest in over time. But when you're just starting out, it's not necessary to have every single tool. The most important tool that you're going to have every single day in your studio is a punty, a glass punty. Pardon me. I think my favorite size is 6mm. Some people like 4, some people like 7, some people like 9. 9's a little thick. I think that's a little overkill, but who am I to say? It's whatever you're most comfortable with. But having punties that are cut to the length and the size that you need to scrape away glass, to collect glass, to handle to rip something off of, that's going to be really your most important tool. So remember to always have clear punties at your disposal, because they can do a lot that the cutting shears can do. They can do what tweezers can do. Also tweezers, don't spend a lot of money on tweezers. Go buy tweezers from the craft store because they are so cheap. So cheap. But things like jacks, you're just gonna have to probably spend a lot of money on jacks. That's just what it is. They are expensive, and unless you're making cups, it's not really necessary. I still don't own a pair of jacks. I just use my reamers. But what I will say, a good reamer. Get you a good reamer. The octagonal ones, the ones that have 8 points, the ones that go really thin to really big, not huge, but like, I think it's 2mm to 30mm or 35mm. Excellent. You don't have to buy the expensive ones. You can buy the cheap ones. The tip is the same. The handle is what's different. Don't be fooled. It just depends on what handle you like the best. Brass tools are good until you overheat them, and then they're not great. So I like personally graphite tools more than I like brass tools, but I do have certain brass reamers that I own. I have the 10mm and the 14mm, and I also have the 4 to 28mm or 4 to 25mm brass reamer too. I don't use them very much, but when I do need them, they are handy. But wasn't necessary for the vast majority of my career, so I went along just adding tools as I needed them. If you want to get a good group of tools, they do have kits on different glass blowing websites like Mountain Glass and Glass Supply, or Lampworking Supply, excuse me. Trying to think if there's another one. I can't think of another one right now, but there are multiple places online where you can purchase glass tools and glass supplies, and they do have kits. Those kits are very comprehensive for beginners for sure, and then you can just add to it as you need. Just remember that expensive tools are nice, but not necessary. Don't go out and spend money on something you're never going to use, or it's going to take you years to get to the point to be able to use. It's not the investment you think it is. Trust me. There's a saying in the climbing community. 2 people decided to learn how to climb. The first one went to the gym, and he rented the gym shoes, rented the gym harness, climbed for a few months, and realized, I've outgrown those shoes. I've outgrown that harness. And then invested the money into a good pair of shoes and a good harness, and continued to get better. The second guy decided he wanted to be a climber. He went out and got the most expensive shoes, the most expensive harness, all the trad equipment, all the ropes, all the extras, all of it. Never climbed once. Your gear does not make you better. It only gives you the opportunity to do different techniques. That's it. And because of how different we all are as individuals, and how our mobility, genuinely our mobility in our hands and in our wrists and in our elbows and our shoulders and our necks is so different, that none of us are going to blow glass the same. And it's very important to understand that. So don't feel like just because you see somebody else with a lot of really expensive equipment and they're doing really cool stuff with it doesn't mean that you cannot also replicate those same techniques in your own style with different tools. Trust me, you can and you will. I believe in you. So let's talk about the storage of glass and why it's important, and it saves us not only time but also our money, because our money is our time in the studio. So let's say we get in a color we really love and we put it on the shelf next to us or put it on the table next to us, and as the next couple weeks, next couple months go by, we start using it, right? Well, as time passes, dust collects on the surface of that glass, and if we don't take time to wipe it off, when we put that glass in the flame, it causes visual imperfections on the glass, because then that carbon material that has settled on that glass is now going to burn into the surface. And it's even worse for tubes, because if you leave a box of tubing open, dust not only gathers on the outside but also the inside, and you have to clean it out. You have to ream it out with a cloth or with a rag. So when you get glass in, you can store it in something as easy as like a cardboard box that shuts. You can put it into drawers, like metal drawers or wooden drawers. You can create a system of different cubby holes with PVC pipe. There's like infinite ways of storing the glass, but the idea is just to keep dust off of glass, and to also manage your colors in a way where it's visually, you're able to find the color you need quickly and have it be clean when you're ready to use it. I personally have metal drawers that I keep all of my glass in, and each drawer has like a little divider thing, and each divider has a color in that divider, not like individual colors, but like all of my pinks, all of my purples, all of my greens, all of my orange, stuff like that. So that's how I keep not only my glass clean, but also then organized. And all the end pieces that I have smaller plastic drawers that are inside that metal housing. I don't know, a cabinet. There we go. It's a metal cabinet. I have those I can pull out and put the smaller pieces by color in those as well, so that I can also use those eventually. I ended up getting that cabinet for free from a business that I worked for in the city. They were getting rid of it, and they asked me if I wanted it, and I was like, yes, I do. So I didn't pay anything for mine, but I know for a fact that places like Goodwill and any local thrift store are going to have really good storage things if you can afford to add that to your studio, or if that's something you even want. But yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as like wrapping your glass in like cellophane, or wrapping it in paper, even just wrapping it in paper, maybe having a label on the paper saying what's in that paper. But keeping your glass clean and keeping it organized will save you a lot of time and effort in the long run. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is glass. So you might invest one time in one torch, and you might invest maybe twice in a pair of tweezers that you like, and each tweezer lasts 10, 15 years a piece, and you blow glass for 30 years and you only own 2 tweezers. Those are good investments. Glass is the investment that never stops. And so my advice is, when you're starting out, the cheap glass is the good glass. I personally use a ton of Chinese color in everything I do. There's almost always a Chinese color on a piece that I make. And it's not because I'm trying to save money, it's because I like that color, I like the malleability, I like the structural integrity of that color. Those Chinese colors are great. They are forgiving, they are structurally very sound, they have quite a bit of integrity to them, and they're consistent. So my advice to you is spend $15 on a pound of glass as opposed to $150 on a pound of glass. And as you become more competent and comfortable using those colors, or as you progress in your techniques, start adding in more expensive colors. You know, you go from the $10 to $15 a pound, $20, $25 a pound, $30, $45 a pound. And then eventually you get into the royal jellies and the telemagentas and all that, which are like $150 or $165, I forget. Very expensive. I love them. I use them all the time, but at a cost. So, cheap glass is good glass. It's not an inferior product. Trust. What I will say though, is that's a color thing. Clear is a little different. Chinese clear is not as dense, is not minerally as dense as German glass. I forget Schott, SCHOTT, I believe is the name of that brand. I can't remember. That's the glass I have. I bought one case of 12mm tube and one case of 6mm rod, and I have had both of those cases for about 3 years now. I bought them when they were on sale. I spent $100 for each case, and normally I think they're $200 a case or something like that, but I bought them when they were 50% off. And online stores are going to run sales. Wait for the sale to come, buy it at a discount, trust me. But Chinese glass is clear isn't as minerally dense, which is not true about the colors, but the clear is still a good glass, but it is not as sturdy. That's what I'll say. I think that the Schott and the Pyrex have a little bit more rigidity to them. They have a little bit more strength. Whereas like if you're just using it to create a lens on something, that Chinese glass is great. But if you're trying to like hold something heavy on the end of it, I would choose Pyrex or Schott. I hope I'm saying that right. So silly. Anyway, so yeah, that's my advice for creating a studio space where it's like workable, where you can take the time to experiment and to explore your curiosities in a way that is safe, where you are mitigating risk, where you are able to enjoy and have fun. Also one more thing. The one more thing is clean your desk. The one more thing is clean your desk. The one more thing is clean your desk. And the reason that we clean our desks, ladies and gentlemen, and let me be a terrible example for you. I had a hair coming off of a tube on my desk about a year ago. I didn't see it. And I was doing something and I ran my hand across my desk and I cut the palm of my hand open. 2 years ago, I had a piece of glass coming off the edge of a tube. And when I went to reach for something across the table, not only did I slice 2 of my fingers open, I also got a 6mm round, 2mm thick chunk of glass stuck into this finger. I still have no feeling in the tip of my finger to this day. It's gone. There are no nerve endings there anymore. Gone. So, clean your desk. It's so important. It takes 10 minutes when you start or when you end. Clean it up. Keep it tidy. And if you drop things on the ground, sweep them up. Because guess what happens when you don't? If you're like me and you have not so great shoes on sometimes, which is to say that like the soles have worn down a little bit, they go right through your shoe and into your toes. Clean up your space. Okay, I think that's my last bit of advice today. If you have any questions, if you want any recommendations, if you want to talk about anything, you can leave a comment down below, or you can send me a message on Patreon. You can also send me a message through my website or on Instagram. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.